Good evening, dignitaries, seniors and colleagues. Last man standing before the interesting session. So let's wrap it up quickly. It's my pleasure and honor to introduce our next speaker. He is a young leader. At the age of 38, he is managing director of one of the oldest publications. He is Mr. Dilip Raghavan. He is MD of Color Publications, which runs 7 different journals touching various industries like paint, polymers, packaging, home and personal care, etc. He is also very instrumental in forming alliances with global organizations. So many of you may know Paint India has just formed an alliance with European Coating Show, which is globally the largest coating show. He has also acquired the home and personal care industry HPCI exhibitions, which is running in India. Some of the things which he have done is he represents India at global stage in various associations. So without further delay, I would welcome Dilip. Stage is yours.
Okay, good evening everyone, and thanks for having me here and giving me this opportunity to speak. I do not have a structured presentation because I think that would be contrary to the very spirit of what sustainability really is. Sustainability is not a patch to be applied, or it's not a document to be abided by. It has to eventually become a way of life, and let's see how we go through it over the next few minutes, probably picking up points that various speakers earlier in the day made. We can qualify some of these ideas that actually constitute sustainability. I have nevertheless got this one slide for the simple reason that last year when I conducted a discussion and I did not have a holding slide, Dr. Samant put up my photo for 30 minutes. So if I can't tolerate it myself, I don't expect all of you to. So I have this one little slide here which you can continue staring at when you get tired of my face. So let's move straight to the subject of what sustainability really is. I think many of the speakers have made my job a little easier in the earlier part of the day. I go back to, let me try and make references to what everyone said, okay? Otherwise, 10 speakers have come, spoken different things, and here you have a 11th speaker who comes and gives you some new knowledge, and you probably walk away getting more confused than you were at the start of the day. So I don't think any good conference session should do that. Let's see if we can make references to what earlier speakers said and hopefully try and connect the dots and walk away a little enriched. So Mr. Rajesh Kubal actually defined what sustainability really is in its most classical definition. Very simply put, it is how you conduct yourselves today without jeopardizing your tomorrow. Now, whether you call it consumption of natural resources or your business or whatever, doesn't matter. It's a very simple way of saying that. How do you conduct yourself today without jeopardizing tomorrow? There were 3 points or 3 tenets or 3 pillars, as he said. So one is the economic aspect, the second is the ecological aspect, and the third is the social aspect. Or put even more simply, profits, planet, and people. Very, very simple. If you can ensure these 3 things, you're on the right path. Now, let's try and pick up individual elements in our business. Of course, finally we are congregated here as under the IRMA banner, so we must make some relevant references to our chemical industry and also to our resin industry and the consuming industries. But having said that, I would like to make this an even more broad-based platform, because sustainability extends far beyond our professional lives. It extends into our daily lives, into our personal lives, into our homes as well. So if you pick up elements of sustainability as applicable to our business, we had speakers, both Mr. Kubal and Mr. Krishnaraj spoke of how alkyds and emulsions alternatively, they're the next big thing. So we'll leave that fight for which is better later. But both alkyds and emulsions have another common fight on a larger scale, which is what about the raw materials that come for manufacturing both alkyds and emulsions? India is growing, the consuming industries are growing, the paint industry is growing, but and that's of course the good news. So the not so good news is these industries are not very self-sufficient in the intermediates, in the backward integrated raw materials. So you take, I mean, again, I don't want to get into science. All of you are the experts in terms of actual chemistry. But if you take, let's say, the emulsions, for example, what happens to the butyl acrylate? What happens to methyl acrylate? Are we self-sufficient in it? No. So we are still depending on China and Taiwan. And ironically, China is the one whom we seem to be fighting on the global stage in terms of our business. So what kind of sustainability are we really creating for ourselves? I don't know. The person, the country who is supposed to be today our biggest, our most bitter business rival, we are kind of, opened up everything and we are depending on their largesse, their mood, their availability of raw material to actually fuel the growth of our industry. Now, all of this we kind of tend to sweep under the carpet because there is a good status quo. We've been growing in double digits over the last 15 years. But God forbid there is a situation where you don't have all of this. We are suddenly not talking of 7% growth becoming 6%. You're talking of a complete standstill. So these are the kind of considerations that must be made. And we must take time to introspect on how sustainable we really are as an industry. Now, I'm giving very small examples. There are multiple examples like this which could be quoted. Another element in our business which we must look at, when you talk of sustainability going ahead, looking forward, there are various regulatory and legislative challenges that our industry does face. We could also do well to draw parallels to other industry, because now we must understand our coatings industry. We talk of, VOCRI and lead and all that. Just to put that in perspective, our industry is one of the least regulated industries. If you think our industry or our coatings industry or resin industry is regulated, you would do well to go and look at other industries like cosmetics and textiles. I'm not really sure what the answer is, but maybe Krishna Raj can help answer that. When did we really find out about the impact of APOs in emulsion polymerization? What year would you remember roughly? In the emulsion polymerization. Okay. So in the textile industry, this was, studied much, much earlier. We don't even know actually. It's okay. So alkyl phenol ethoxylates, APO, the full form. A specific case in that is non-alkyl phenol ethoxylates, which find their way into the polymer emulsions through surfactants, which are endocrine disruptors, which can actually make a male fish morph into a female fish or vice versa, and you have male fish actually being able to reproduce, which is completely against the concept of nature. I don't know how many of you find that funny. I definitely don't. It's a very serious issue. But these are the kind of issues that we are grappling with, and what we learned today in the paint industry has been discovered many, many years ago in the textile industry, and these things were banned. Again, when we talk of silicones, it came in as a kind of a new, fresh breath of air for our industry. We continue to use it, and of course it is a good product at many levels, but how many of us actually know that its selective use in the cosmetics industry is actually getting banned? This is a very recent legislation. Your D4, D5, D6 chemistries, cyclopenta, cyclotetrasiloxanes, they're getting banned in the cosmetics industries. Now, I don't think anyone in our industry has a clue about that. Yeah, well, of course, not completely, yes, because medical sciences are also evolving. All of these bans and these regulations are actually governed by what medical sciences find. Synthetic chemistry is a new discipline. The medical fraternity's understanding of it and its impact on human life continuously evolves. So we will find out more and more of these things. Today something gets banned, suddenly it gets accepted. Bisphenol A is another perpetual, quandary. Every alternate day you have a new theory saying it is good or it's not good or it's bad or whatever. But the point is, these kind of learnings are going to emerge more and more. How ready are we as an industry to adapt to these changes, find alternatives, and incorporate those alternatives into our stream of functioning so that our growth is not derailed? I am still talking of only the economic aspect of sustainability. The more serious elements will follow later. So we must be more cognizant as an industry to these particular factors. Our understanding of chemistry, our understanding of medical sciences, our learnings from other industries, we must be at the top of our game. Otherwise, we stand the risk of, absolutely collapsing in a heap, and suddenly, growth coming down by 1 or 2% doesn't seem like such a big problem. Moving on, other, let's say, softer factors, which again are, in the stream of sustainability. Finally, what are we talking of sustainability? Something that we do today not impacting our tomorrow. So we are creating global businesses. We are doing well for ourselves. But as Mr. Mohan Nair said, how many of us are actually creating some sort of a succession plan, some sort of an empowerment for somebody to actually take over this business if we cease to exist tomorrow, or if we simply lose interest in the business. Now, whether this means grooming existing employees, whether it means grooming the next generation, whether it means forging collaborations with somebody else so that you're kind of deferring your risks and hedging your risks, so that if something should happen to you, there is somebody else to take over the business. Or even in a very simple sort of way, I mean, it's not a classical business theory, but if you think you've done well for yourselves through your life, done well, okay, thank you, this business served me really well, now I think I need to shut it down. That's also not a wrong thing. If that's what you want to do to your business, so be it, but even that needs a certain workflow, it needs a certain approach, it needs a certain effort. So how many of us in our businesses are really equipped to do this? I don't know, but we must. Otherwise, it would be definitely it would be a lost opportunity, and there would the result would be less than ideal. So this is again something that we must take care of in terms of succession planning. People are going to be another challenge. Now, what I mean by that is, let's look at the paint industry. Okay, all of us are directly or indirectly connected to it. Depending on what number who throws at you, 55,000 crores is where our industry is. Headed to 70,000 crores in the next 2 to 3 years, headed to about 100,000 in the next 7 to 8 years. Now, okay, never mind the raw materials and the other considerations. That's a kind, it follows a linear pattern. But what about the manpower that is needed, both in the manufacturing sector as well as the application sector, to fuel that growth? Do we have enough people? Do we have enough universities? Do we have enough vocational courses which are churning out those courses? The answer is no. We do have the Paint and Coating Skill Council, which has been formed, which is a step in the right direction, but whether they can actually help to that extent, time will tell. But at least there is a step made in that direction. So this is, it's not all gloomy, of course. We do have examples of some efforts having been put in. But as I said, this cannot be a patchwork approach. You cannot say, I have done 1 out of 3 things right, and so it'll get taken care of. It has to become an integral part of every step of business that we take. Moving out of our industry, I think some shining examples of how this has been done is ITC. They're a big business conglomerate. They have a thriving business of paper production besides other things. So I have actually seen a case study of what they have done at Bhadrachalam in terms of both caring for the community where they actually harvest the paper, the kind of reforestation or afforestation practices that they're implementing, because finally the paper source is going to come from the bark of tree, cellulosics. So it's actually, again, the paucity of time does not allow me to go into details, but it's if you do have access to that case study, please have a look at it. It's a brilliant example of how they could not only manage their resources, but also help, revive the community of people that were in that particular vicinity. And that is what sustainability really is. You're talking of your own business, you're talking of the environment, and you're talking of the social aspect, which is people. So I think I've made my point in terms of the business. There are so many other elements that could come in, but again, we have, Samir spoke about his difficulty in standing between the last speaker. Try and look at it from my point of view. I'm standing between you and the cocktail, so it makes it all the more difficult. Okay, so moving on, I think we must move on and look more deeply into the most serious aspect of it, which is the environment. Okay, let's also look at it in the context of what some of the speakers spoke in the morning. Somebody spoke of, I think Ramki spoke of how Relwood is actually becoming, it's a sustainable option, because of course on the one hand, for making furniture the option is to use wood, which leads to deforestation, which is not a good thing for the planet. Okay, so just park that thought here. But finally, what is railwood? It's natural fibers which are reinforcing polymers. Polymers derived from crude. The crude itself, now the whole crude workflow itself is meant to be a polluting industry, a non-sustainable industry. So here you're talking of polymers, here you're talking of the other option, which is wood, deforestation. So what that actually, the sum and substance of this is, we are actually choosing between the lesser of the two evils. And why is that so? Sorry to say, but we as a human race over the last few years, consistently through our actions, have actually screwed the planet. Is it an irreversible process or not? I don't know. It's an extremely grim situation. There are reports. Now, again, the press tends to exaggerate, but in the New York Post, there is an article which says human life could become untenable on this planet by the year 2050. Who will know? We will know in 2050. But the point that I'm trying to make is, there is some dramatic action that's needed. Incremental fixes are not going to work. We must believe in the ingenuity of the human race. If we have the ability to screw things up, hopefully we also have the ingenuity to revive it. Okay, not in the same easy way, but or again, the cynic in me, the optimist in me says it might happen. The pessimist in me says that it's challenging, but the least we can do is at least perpetuate this particular process so that we prolong the existence of life on Earth, make it a better place for the next generation. Hopefully they can come up with some magic and make things a better place, because I think all of us have enough baggage of the old world on us where we cannot make a very dramatic change. What we must do is we must empower the next generation. Sustainability, environmental studies must find their way into the mainstream of education. Math, science, geography, history, of course, continue with all of that, but of what use is all of this going to be if we cease to exist? So it's important that the current government of the day, obviously it's a very policy-oriented decision. It's important that the authorities that are there, HRD ministry, whatever it is, must look right now at introducing environmental studies into the curriculum at every step of life. Even at home, okay? Why leave the onus on the government, on the educational institutes? How sustainable are we in our own practices at home? Simple things we see it, thanks to WhatsApp and Facebook, we see, yeah, don't leave your tap on for too long, okay? But there is a modicum of truth in every single thing that's there. So it must be an aggregate of these kind of efforts to try and become more sustainable in what we do. We could learn well from housewives, because for them sustainability is, I think it's ingrained in them. Okay, that discipline, that empathy, whatever you call it, just that awareness, it's ingrained in them. So we do well to tap into their intellect, into their, the practices that they follow, and kind of adapt it into a more industrial environment or into our daily lives as well. Mr. Mohan Nair spoke of, another example, sorry, before I come to what he said. Another example is, I think one of the speakers was speaking of how palm oil and, various natural, forms of raw materials make for a more sustainable development. Sure, in a chemistry parlance it does. But again, try and look at it in the context of palm oil. Now, to produce the palm oil which goes into various industries, what are we doing? We are destroying the rainforests in Sumatra and Borneo in Indonesia, killing the last existing orangutans in the world. Okay, they're a species like us, a living species like us. What are we doing? Killing the last available members of that particular species. How does this constitute sustainability? I feel rotten as a human being when I see those posts, or I see those particular news items in the news. It doesn't matter. Okay, it's at some level I am culpable, like all of us are, because I am actually serving those industries that consume the palm oil. So it's a very complex situation. It doesn't exonerate me just because I stand here and floss eloquent about how we can become more sustainable. The truth is I'm as much a part of the problem as anyone else is. So it's a complex situation. It's a complex situation. It's not something that a half an hour presentation can solve. We must become more aware, more empathetic, towards our environment, towards the people around us, towards our planet. And I'll put some things in perspective in a small video that I have later. But Mr. Mohan Nair spoke about artificial intelligence, and while he was speaking, something struck me, So artificial intelligence at one end of the spectrum is the way ahead, because of course it brings good things with it, okay? It might not plug into sustainability, that's a different issue. But what also struck me then is like we have artificial intelligence, we also should not lose sight of the fact that one thing about humans is how artificial intelligence can change their lives. But what about the natural stupidity that is there in all of us? Example, what do? We want to build a shade or something to cover the entrance of our office. What do? We cut down a tree that gives us shade in any case in its natural form, cut it down and create a small canopy of sorts with the wood and say, this is giving me shade. But that's what the bloody tree was doing in the first place. Second thing, we go to a shop and buy an artifact saying, I go to this particular place where, let's say there are artifacts of elephants made of ivory, and I say I'm going to buy these little toys or these artifacts which are elephant idols made of ivory. Where did that come from? An elephant was probably killed, its tusks were cut off, and those tusks were used to make ivory models of elephants. So, I mean, what are we really degenerating to as a human race? We must keep our eyes and ears open. There are examples like this all around us. We must become more aware of this. So, as I said, I'm not diving deep into the elements of chemistry because we've done that during the day, and again, half an hour is just not enough to do that. I want to ask you a question. How many of you actually believe, we spoke about it, I think in some oblique way said that we must take care of planet Earth, right? So, how many of you actually think that humans are going to be the race, or we humans who think we are highly evolved and smart are actually going to help the Earth survive? Yes or no? Simple. There's nothing right or wrong. Just, do you think we as humans can help the planet Earth survive? Yes? Okay. Can you play that video, please? Again, this is not some genius that I chanced upon. It's something from the internet. But please have a look at it. It has a very, very deep impact and a deep meaning.
Some call me nature. Others call me Mother Nature. I've been here for over 4.5 billion years. 22,500 times longer than you. I don't really need people, but people need me. Yes, your future depends on me. When I thrive, you thrive. When I falter, you falter. Or worse. But I've been here for eons. I have fed species greater than you, and I have starved species greater than you. My oceans, my soil, my flowing streams, my forests, they all can take you or leave you. How you choose to live each day, whether you regard or disregard me, doesn't really matter to me. One way or the other. Your actions will determine your fate, not mine. I am nature. I will go on. I am prepared to evolve. Are you?
Okay, there you go. Nature will morph itself into one form, into another. It's we, living beings, who will cease to exist. Not such a big problem because I have to take responsibility for my actions. Okay, I cease to exist because of my own actions. Fine. It's a kind of a balance of nature. So where is the problem? The problem is that there is a next generation to follow. The next generation that will suffer on account of my actions, on account of our actions, for no fault of theirs. There was a very telling statement recently. You know, Ukraine, there are elections, a slew of elections. We are the only country which went through elections recently. And so one thing that elections have taught us, besides other things, is that politicians all over the world are crazy. It's not only here that it happens. So, but ironically, we had a comedian who was elected as the president of Ukraine. And of course, people said, what is a comedian going to do? It's probably because the old guys were so bad. And then he got about his serious business and office. And he said something that very few enlightened politicians, so-called enlightened politicians around the world have never said. It's a very profound statement. He told all his ministers, drop all the photographs of all the old leaders and all the, you know, the godmen and everything that you have. Please instead put up a photograph of your children in your office and try and understand that every decision that you make from here on is going to impact their lives. What a profound statement. Okay? So this is the kind of thought leadership that we would need right up there, the authorities, but never mind, all of us can make our own little difference. So we must try to now, it's never too late, okay? I mean, the two scenarios are either it's too late, in any case we might kind of go down fighting. If it's not, this is the time to begin. It's never too late. I think we owe it to our future generations, okay? It's extremely simple. It's no rocket science. We must empower them at least to reach a stage where they in turn are empowered to do something. But if the 2050 story, for example, is going to be true, I don't know. The clock is ticking, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. I don't know whether we have enough time. But we must believe in our own ingenuity. We must believe in whatever karma in the world, in the powers that be, and hope that we can reverse this trend. Now, of course, all of this cannot be seen in isolation. We are a part of an industry. We must continue to grow. We must continue to thrive. But bringing in these little sensibilities, this awareness into our functioning, I think is something that we could do well to, you know, it would definitely won't be a bad choice. In conclusion, all I can say is that it's a changing order in the world that we are seeing. Okay, I think growth, all of these are transient phenomena. Some years you grow, some years you don't. It's all part of it. I don't think a bad GDP or a little bit of negative growth ever killed anyone. But these are things which will make a difference to whether we exist or not. It is an existential crisis for sure. Even in the business landscape, we've already seen it. Somebody made a reference to the fact that CSR activities, sustainability activities are actually making their way into company reports, into company filings, into the promotional aspects of how a company presents itself. So I actually envisage in the near future that companies would be more stock market worthy or more, let's say, investor worthy based on the sustainability practices that they adopt. Profit and loss will of course always figure in the scheme of things, but that's not going to be the real thing. It's actually going to be dependent on these kind of things. Even all of us in our individual businesses, when we are evaluated by vendors, by customers, by possible investors, by possible partners, of course the numbers will matter, but the sustainability is actually going to make a big difference. And as a parting note, I dream of a day, not so much for me, but for my kid, for my son, who's today 11 years old, when the well-being of our country and the well-being of our world will not be determined or will not be measured by what the GDP of that year is. It will actually be measured by how sustainable we are making our world. Thank you.
Any more questions?
The realization from the owners so sustainability of our and our kids, everything put together, these companies are really striving hard. I am a part of that organization where we do this kind of thing. I was just talking to Dr. Samant in the afternoon session. Maybe I should have shared some of my thoughts on the sustainability. I wish to do it quickly here. A lot of things are changed in South Asia part, specifically a country like Indonesia. It's a human race. Like, I want to grow my business. I will do whatever it takes. And that sometimes you do something wrong. And then you realize it's wrong for your family, your society, your kids, and you charge to change. That's one of the change they're bringing in right now. They're talking about deforestation, fine. But at the same time, they're talking bring up sustainability. They're trying to do it sustainably not only for themselves, they're doing for the entire surrounding. They're trying to bring in sustainability from the plantation. They're trying to bring sustainability for the transportation. They're trying to bring sustainability for the individual farmers over there who have individual plots. So they're also telling them what kind of resources you have to use, what kind of recycling process you can do, so can build up a sustainable cycle for them. So this all thing is going around right now in the South Asian parts, specifically in Indonesia, where people have been portraying little bad picture, but it's, yes, it's an improvement for sure.
Yeah, if I can respond, look, I'm not here to, obviously not here to run down the industry. So if you revert saying that there is a good effort, it's only going to make me happy. The point is, we must at the same time not, while we should acknowledge and build upon it, your story should be an inspiration for all of us to do it in our industry and this thing. At the same time, let us not kind of get into any false sense of security saying, oh, now we have taken care of this, now it's all okay. So, as I said, let's have that balanced approach where we accept that there was wrongdoing and we continue to get inspired by good stories like this. I'm sure it's there, and I can only hope, I mean, for the love of God and for the future of my son, I can only hope that this does pay back dividends and make our world a better place. So good on you.
Dilip, I was just sharing the information.
Yeah,
not
sure,
debating,
sure,
just sharing the
absolutely.
information
So
for the whole team.
Sure, thanks.
Any more questions? Can we have memento for Dilip?